Welcome back to another deep dive. Today we are tackling a subject that it probably occupies about 80% of our waking thoughts, whether we like to admit it or not.
It really does. It dictates where we live, what we eat, how we stress, and often, how we judge ourselves and other people.
And yet, despite being so central to our existence, it's the one subject where we probably have the biggest gap between what we think creates success and what actually does.
That's the core of it, really. The gap is enormous. It's less about knowledge and more about something else entirely.
Exactly. We're talking about money. But before anyone reaches for that skip button thinking we're about to discuss interest rates or yield curves or how to read a corporate balance sheet, stop.
They are definitely not doing that.
No, we weren't talking about the mechanics of finance. We're going to talk about what goes on inside your head when you open your wallet.
Which is actually where the real game is played. The mechanics, you can learn those from a book. The behavior is hard.
It's so hard. And that's why we're diving into the concepts from Morgan Housel's incredible work, specifically looking at the psychology of money. And to kick things off, I want to share a comparison that it really blew my mind when I first read it. It completely reframes how we should view this whole topic.
No, I'm ready. Let's unpack it.
Okay, so picture the medical field. If you have a serious heart condition, who do you go to?
A heart surgeon.
A specialist.
A specialist, right. Someone who has gone to medical school for 4 years, did a residency, did a fellowship, and has a specialized board certification. A hobbyist cannot replace a heart surgeon.
No, you would not want someone who just reads WebMD on the weekends operating on your valves.
Not at all. There is a rigid hierarchy of competence. Credentials matter. Your education matters.
It's absolute.
Exactly. Or think about physics. You cannot have a janitor at a university suddenly walk into the lab and outcalculate a NASA engineer on orbital mechanics.
Impossible. It just can't happen. These are hard sciences. Expertise is measurable. It's absolute. If you don't have the training, you can't do the job. You can't fake your way into building a suspension bridge.
But finance. Oh, finance is the Wild West.
Is the absolute Wild West.
Yeah.
In finance, you can have a janitor, and this is a real story we're going to get into, who never went to college, who works at a gas station, who simply buys blue chip stocks, waits, and dies a multimillionaire.
Ronald Reed. Yeah, that's a famous case. A man who fixed cars and swept floors, yet somehow outperformed half of Wall Street.
Yes. And then, on the exact same block, maybe in the same city, you can have an elite trader. Someone with an MBA from Wharton or Harvard, someone who stares at a Bloomberg terminal for 12 hours a day, someone who understands complex derivatives, risk models, quantitative easing.
The whole 9 yards, the smartest person in the room.
And that person can go broke in a single afternoon because of one greedy, leveraged play.
It creates this baffling paradox, doesn't it? In what other field can a rank amateur with zero formal education completely outperform the most educated, most sophisticated expert?
It doesn't happen.
It doesn't happen in engineering. It doesn't happen in medicine. A janitor will never perform a better kidney transplant than a surgeon. But it happens in money every single day.
So that's our hook. That's the mystery we're trying to solve today. The core premise here is stop pretending you understand money, or at least stop pretending it's a science.
Right, because we tend to treat money like it's physics or math. We think it's about formulas and spreadsheets and optimizing data. But the whole thesis of this deep dive is that money management is not a hard science.
It's a soft skill.
It's a soft skill. It is 100% psychology.
It's not about what you know. It's about how you behave.
Precisely. You can be a genius mathematically, you can model the yield curve perfectly, but if you panic sell when the market dips 10%, you're a disaster.
All that knowledge is useless.
Completely useless. Conversely, you can be terrible at math, you might even count on your fingers, but if you have control over your fear and your greed, if you have patience, you can build massive wealth.
So our mission today is to peel back the jargon. Forget the spreadsheets. We are going to look at naked human nature. We're talking greed, fear, envy, hope. We want to understand why geniuses go broke and how ordinary people, like you, like us, can actually build wealth.
And we have a great roadmap for this. We're going to start by looking at why our brains are, to put it mildly, evolutionarily totally unsuited for the modern economy. We are essentially fighting our own biology.
Monkeys in suits, I believe is the phrase used.
That's the one, monkeys in suits. Then we'll get into the role of luck and risk, which is a topic that is so often ignored because, well, it hurts our ego.
It really does.
Then we'll talk about the tragedy of never having enough, which is maybe the most dangerous part of all this. Then the boring but powerful magic of compounding. And finally, the crucial difference between getting rich and staying rich.
Oh, I love that distinction. That's a huge one. Okay, let's jump in. Segment 1. Monkeys in suits. The primitive brain.
This is foundational. I mean, if you don't get your head around this part, nothing else really makes sense.
This part really hit me because we walk around acting like we should be good at this. We beat ourselves up when we aren't. We think, oh, I should know how to save for retirement. I should understand the stock market. Why is this so hard for me?
Right. We have this assumption of competence.
But the reality check here is that this stuff is all brand new.
It is in the absolute infancy of human history. We are trying to run brand new software on very, very old hardware. Our brains are the old hardware.
Give us the timeline, because I think people assume finance has been around forever. People think, well, the Romans had coins, so we should know how to do this by now.
Well, sure, coins have been around for a long time. King Alyattes of Lydia minted coins in 600 BC. But the modern financial system, the tools we use to manage our lives, they are babies. Think about retirement.
This is the concept of it.
Just the very idea of retirement, the idea that you work for a certain number of years, you stop, and then you live off your accumulated assets for another 20, 30, maybe 40 years.
It feels like that's always been the goal.
But it's a blip in history. Before World War II, retirement basically didn't exist for the common person. You worked until you died.
That's it.
That was it. If you were lucky, maybe your kids took care of you in your old age, or you worked the farm until your body just gave out. The idea that everyone gets a golden age where they play golf and live off assets, that is a post-WWII invention.
Wow. That's wildly recent. That's less than 100 years ago. My grandparents' generation.
It gets even more recent, the 401k. The primary vehicle for Americans to save for that retirement. Do you know when that was created?
I would assume, the 50s or 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Right after the war when this idea started.
1978.
No. Get out of here.
Yeah.
1978. There are people listening to this deep dive right now who are older than the 401k.
I guarantee it. And the Roth IRA, the other major retirement account.
Okay, I'm going to guess later. Maybe the 80s?
1998.
1998.
The Roth IRA is a millennial. It is barely old enough to rent a car without paying the extra fee.
That puts it in such stark perspective. We are trying to master a system that is barely older than a smartphone in the grand scheme of things.
So if you feel like you're bad at this or like you're just figuring it out on the fly, it's because we all are. The entire human race is figuring this out on the fly. We don't have 10,000 years of instinct for compound interest or asset allocation.
Which leads directly to that evolutionary mismatch idea.
It's the core problem.
The poodle analogy. I love that this part of the notes. It just made it so clear.
It's a perfect visual, isn't it? Think about a standard poodle. It looks so domesticated. It's got the fluffy haircut. It sleeps on a silk pillow. It eats specialized organic kibble from a nice ceramic bowl.
Right. It looks nothing like a wolf. It looks civilized.
Yeah.
It looks like it belongs in a fancy city apartment.
It does. But if that poodle sees a squirrel run across the yard,
It goes absolutely nuts.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
loses its mind.
10,000 years of instinct just takes over in a split second. The wolf comes out. It doesn't calculate the caloric return on catching the squirrel. It doesn't think about the consequences of running into the street. It just snaps into pure primal hunting mode.
Okay, so we're the poodles in this scenario.
We are 100% the poodles. We wear suits, we sit in air-conditioned offices, we look at spreadsheets on high-resolution monitors, we look domesticated.
We talk about beta and alpha and diversification.
All of it. We look and sound very sophisticated. But when the market crashes 20% in a week, or when inflation spikes and the price of gas doubles, or when we see our neighbor get rich on some random crypto coin and we feel that intense pang of envy,
The squirrel appears.
the squirrel appears, and we revert to jungle survival mode, fear, greed, herd mentality. We stop analyzing data and we start reacting with our amygdala, the lizard part of our brain.
So we're essentially primitive people in suits trying to navigate a system that requires robotic logic, but we're running on hormones and instincts designed to help us run away from lions.
And if you just accept that one fact, so much of what we call irrational behavior starts to make sense. We aren't crazy, we're just evolutionary mismatches.
Which brings us to a really touching and, I think, important point in the source material, the idea of empathy.
This is so crucial. If you want to understand money, You have to stop judging people's financial decisions and start trying to understand them.
We tend to judge people so harshly, especially when it comes to money. We look at how other people spend their money and we think, that is so stupid. Why would they do that? That makes no logical sense.
And the classic example, the one everyone points to, is the lottery.
Right. The stats on this are just staggering. Low-income U.S. households spend, on average, over $400 a year on lottery tickets.
Which is often a huge percentage of their discretionary income. And it's especially jarring when you look at that Federal Reserve data that shows many of those same households couldn't come up with $400 for an emergency.
So the rational, wealthy observer looks at that from their comfortable armchair and says, that's a stupid tax. You are literally burning money. If you just saved that $400, you'd have your emergency fund. They are throwing it away on math that doesn't work.
And look, mathematically, the observer is correct. It is a negative expectation game. The math is objectively terrible.
But psychologically,
They are missing the point entirely. They are judging the action without understanding the need that drives it.
explain that. What are they buying if they're not buying a realistic probability of winning?
They're buying hope. You have to try and put yourself in their shoes. If you are living paycheck to paycheck, if you're struggling to keep the lights on and feed your family, you have no tangible path to what society calls the good life.
There's no promotion or savings plan that's going to get you a mansion.
Exactly. You cannot save your way to a mansion on minimum wage. You can't invest your way to a luxury vacation when you have zero disposable income. The spreadsheet says save, but your lived reality says it won't matter enough to change my life.
So that lottery ticket.
That lottery ticket, it is the only time for a few dollars that they can hold a tangible entry pass to a dream life they can't otherwise touch. For the few hours or days before the drawing, they are allowed to dream. It's a psychological release valve.
Wow. It's a payment for a feeling.
It's a payment for the feeling of possibility. So one person's crazy financial decision is another person's lifeline. And we have to stop judging those decisions through our own lens, through our own experiences.
That really changes how you look at the world. It's not just about math errors. It's about emotional survival.
And that ties right into another form of bias that shapes us without us even realizing it. Generational bias,
Yeah.
or what the source material calls your money origin story.
I found this absolutely fascinating. The idea that your birth year dictates your worldview on money more than your IQ or your education ever could.
It creates your factory settings, your default assumptions about how the world works.
Mhm.
Let's look at the data because it's so clear. Let's say you were born in 1950. By the time you are in your teens and 20s, that super impressionable age where you're learning about the economy, getting your first job, what was the stock market doing? It was flat for about a decade, and inflation was high.
So you grow up watching your parents and the news and your own small experiences, and you conclude stocks are dead money. It's a scam. You put money in, and it just gets eaten by inflation. Why would I ever invest?
Exactly. That is your lived reality. It's not a theory, it's a fact you experience. But now, let's say you were born 20 years later in 1970.
Different world.
Completely different world. By the time you hit your 20s, it's the 1990s, the dot-com boom. The S&P 500 increased tenfold in that decade. You watch people you know get rich just by showing up and buying tech stocks.
So that person's factory setting is the market is a money printing machine. Stocks only go up. If you aren't invested, you're an idiot.
And here's the key. Neither of those people is wrong based on their personal experience. They are both reacting rationally to the slice of history they witnessed firsthand, but they have totally different and probably permanent biases and risk tolerances.
The person from the 70s might be recklessly aggressive, and the person from the 50s might be permanently scared of stocks.
And they'll both think the other person is crazy.
There was that incredible example about JFK.
Oh, John F. Kennedy. It's perfect. He was running for president in 1960. A reporter asked him about his memories of the Great Depression. Now, for most of the country, the Depression was the defining trauma of a generation. It was starvation, it was breadlines, it was desperation.
Right. It shaped everyone's worldview for decades.
And JFK's answer, he basically said he didn't realize how bad it was until he read about it in a history book at Harvard.
Because the Kennedy family was so obscenely wealthy.
They actually got richer during the Depression. They had cash when cash was king and assets were cheap. They hired more servants because labor was cheap. So even though he lived through the exact same dates on the calendar as a struggling farmer in Oklahoma, his experience of the Great Depression was the complete opposite.
That is such a powerful reminder. We think we're all looking at the same world, but we're looking at it through the very specific, very narrow lens of our own personal history.
So the actionable insight here for you, for the listener, is to really take a moment and identify your own origin story. What were the formative financial events of your childhood and young adulthood? Were you scarred by poverty? Were you spoiled by a bull market? Did your parents lose their house? Did they win big on a stock?
You have to know your own bias before you can make objective decisions.
You have to ask, do I believe this because it's universally true, or do I believe this because it's what happened to me? It's a hard question to answer, honestly.
Okay, that feels like a great place to transition. Moving on to segment 2, and this is my favorite part of the deep dive, the two sides of the coin, luck and risk.
This is the stuff that gets ignored, deliberately ignored, I think, because it really hurts our ego. We hate this topic.
We really do. We love the narrative of the genius. He had a vision, she had grit, they outworked everyone. We hate admitting that maybe, just maybe, they got really, really lucky.
It feels like it discounts their effort. It makes success feel random, and we don't like random. We like control.
It's the narrative fallacy. We want a clean cause and effect story. We want to believe that if we just follow the 7 steps of successful people, we will also be successful. But the story of Bill Gates is the ultimate example of how luck plays a role you can't ignore.
And let's be clear, no one is saying Bill Gates isn't brilliant. He obviously is. But you can't tell his story without telling the story of his luck.
So let's break it down. The year is 1968. Bill Gates is a student at Lakeside School in Seattle. Now, this is a private school, and the Mothers Club at this school decided to use the proceeds from a rummage sale.
A rummage sale.
A rummage sale to lease a computer for the students, and not just any computer. This was incredibly advanced stuff for 1968.
This was a Teletype Model 30 hooked up to a General Electric mainframe. It was time-sharing. Most universities, let alone high schools, did not have this kind of access. Gates had basically unlimited access to high-level computing power at age 13.
So let's just run the numbers on how rare this was.
Okay, let's do it. There were roughly 303 million high school-age people in the world in 1968.
300 million.
Okay. About 18 million of those lived in the U.S. About 270,000 lived in Washington state. Maybe 100,000 in the Seattle area. And of those, only about 300 students went to Lakeside School.
So if you start with 303 million and end with 300 who had that specific access,
Yeah.
that is literally a 1 in a million shot.
It is a 1 in a million event. And Gates himself fully admits it. He says, if there had been no Lakeside, there would have been no Microsoft. That is pure, unadulterated luck. It was an accident of birth that gave him a head start that almost no one else on the planet had.
But, and this is where it gets really mind-bending, there is a flip side to that 1 in a million coin, a third founder.
The forgotten friend, Kent Evans.
Most people know Bill Gates and Paul Allen. But at Lakeside, in that computer room, there was a trio. Gates, Allen, and Kent Evans. And by all accounts, especially from Gates, Kent was the smartest of the group. He was the best businessman. He was the one who was supposed to run Microsoft with them.
So he had the same 1 in a million luck of being at Lakeside. He had the same access. He had the same, if not more, skill. But he didn't become a billionaire
Because he died.
before he could even graduate high school. He died in a mountaineering accident.
And the source material points out, what are the odds of a high school student in the U.S. dying in a mountaineering accident?
It's roughly 1 in a million.
That is just chilling.
It is. It's the perfect symmetry of fortune and misfortune. Bill Gates got the 1 in a million tailwind of luck. Kent Evans got the 1 in a million headwind of risk. Same magnitude, opposite direction.
And we tend to judge those outcomes so differently. If you succeed, you're a genius. Your story is studied in business schools. If you fail, or if you get wiped out by a freak accident, we just forget you. Or we assume you did something wrong.
We completely ignore the role of chance because it's uncomfortable. We judge based on results. Housel brings up John D. Rockefeller. He built Standard Oil. He became the richest man in modern history. We call him a tycoon. But he broke a lot of laws to do it.
He was ruthless.
He walked a very, very thin line. A judge at the time once called his business practices no better than a common thief. But because he won, because he succeeded, we reframe it as business audacity or vision.
But if things had gone a little differently.
Exactly. If luck had tilted just slightly the other way, if the government had cracked down 5 years earlier, or if one of his risky plays had failed during an economic downturn, Rockefeller might have died in prison, he'd be remembered as a failed criminal, a cautionary tale. We wouldn't be studying his business strategies, we'd be studying his mistakes.
So what do we do with this information? If success is just luck and failure is just risk, How do we learn anything? It feels a little nihilistic.
I don't think it is. The takeaway isn't that effort doesn't matter. It's that you have to be a forgiving observer. Stop worshiping the billionaires as gods who can't fail, and stop mocking the people who go broke as idiots who made all the wrong moves. Often, they're just on different sides of the same probability coin.
And for yourself,
Yeah.
for your own decisions.
Focus on broad patterns, not specific people. Don't try to replicate Bill Gates dropping out of Harvard to start a company. That is an extreme outlier event that was heavily dependent on his 1 in a million luck. You can't replicate his luck.
So what can you replicate?
You can replicate the universal patterns. Things like saving a high portion of your income, patience, long-term thinking, diversification. Those are things that work for most people most of the time, regardless of luck.
I like that. Focus on the rule, not the exception.
Right. And always recognize that risk is always lurking no matter how smart you are. Which leads us to the trap that catches even the smartest and luckiest people.
Segment 3, the trap of never enough. This is all about the psychology of envy.
This is the most dangerous emotion in finance. Not greed, not fear, envy. Envy is what takes down the wealthy.
There's a baseball analogy in the source that explains it perfectly. Imagine a rookie baseball player. He just got drafted. He signs his first professional contract. He's making $500,000 a year.
Which is, by any objective measure, rich. He's in the top 1% of earners in the country. He feels like a king. He can buy his mom a house. He can get the car he always wanted. He has made it.
Yeah. Until he walks into the locker room for the first time. And he sits down next to the team superstar, Mike Trout, who is making $36 million a year.
And in that instant, that $500,000 feels like minimum wage. The social comparison, the moving goalpost, just crushes his satisfaction. He was perfectly happy, but now he sees what is possible, and he feels poor.
His happiness just evaporates. And this happens at every single level of wealth. Which brings us to the story of Rajat Gupta. This is the ultimate tragic cautionary tale.
This story just breaks my heart, honestly, because Rajat Gupta was a true rags-to-riches success story. He was an orphan from the slums of Kolkata in India. He worked his way up from absolutely nothing. He got into Harvard Business School, became the CEO of McKinsey.
The most prestigious consulting firm in the world. He was advising presidents and Fortune 500 CEOs, the top of the mountain.
He retired with a net worth of about $100 million.
Okay, let's just pause on that number. $100 million. That is screw you money. That is my grandkids are financially set money. He had won the game.
He had won. He had reputation. He had wealth. He had respect. But he started hanging out in different circles. Circles with private equity guys, hedge fund managers, people who made $100 million in a single year.
And next to them, he felt poor again. He wanted to be the billionaire club. $100 million was no longer enough.
So in 2008, during the peak of the financial crisis, he was sitting on the board of Goldman Sachs. And in a very secret meeting, he learned that Warren Buffett was about to make an emergency $5 billion investment into Goldman to save the bank from collapsing. This was top secret, market-moving information.
And what did he do with it?
16 seconds after the board call ended, 16 seconds, he picked up his phone and dialed a hedge fund manager named Raj. He leaked the info. The hedge fund immediately bought up Goldman stock before the news went public.
And Gupta got a piece of the profit on the back end.
He stood to make about $17 million from the various insider trading schemes he was involved in.
So let's just do the math on that. He had $100 million. He risked his entire reputation, his freedom, and his legacy for $17 million more.
He risked what he had and needed for what he didn't have and didn't need.
It is the definition of irrational.
Yeah.
There's no other word for it.
And he went to prison, he lost everything, his reputation is completely destroyed, all because he didn't have a braking system. He didn't have the psychological ability to say, enough.
We see this pattern again and again. Jesse Livermore, the boy plunger.
The greatest stock trader of the 1920s.
Ah.
A legend. He shorted the market during the 1929 crash. While everyone else was jumping out of windows, he made the equivalent of $3 billion in today's money. In one day.
He must have felt like a god.
And that was his downfall. He thought he was invincible. He thought he couldn't lose, so he kept making bigger and bigger and bigger bets. He couldn't stop. He had enough level.
And within a few years, he lost it all.
All of it, and then some. He died by suicide in 1940, deeply in debt.
It really seems like capitalism is designed to do two things simultaneously. Generate wealth and generate envy.
Yes. And if you let the envy win, you will eventually lose the wealth. It's almost an iron law.
So the key takeaway here is you have to define your honor. enough before you start.
You have to have a finish line. It doesn't mean you stop earning money, but you have to have a point where you say, okay, I have enough. I can provide for my family. I have my freedom. From this point on, I am done taking life-altering risks. You have to be able to get off the treadmill.
You switch from growth mode to preservation mode.
There is no reason to risk what you need for what you don't need. It's the most important rule of financial survival.
Okay, speaking of survival, let's talk about how to actually build that wealth in the first place. Segment 4, the boring magic of compounding.
Yes. The eighth wonder of the world. The part everyone nods at, but very few people actually have the patience to do.
We all know the word compounding. We've seen the charts where the line goes up. But the source uses an analogy about ice ages that made it click for me in a completely new way.
It's a fascinating scientific truth. For a long time, geologists thought ice ages were caused by, super, super cold winters. They just figured the Earth froze over.
That makes intuitive sense. Cold equals ice.
It does, but it was wrong. Ice ages are actually caused by summers that aren't quite hot enough to melt the previous winter's snow.
Okay, explain that. How does that work?
It's something called the albedo effect. If a summer is just a little bit cool, it doesn't melt all the snow from the winter, so a thin layer of snow is left over. That snow is white, so it reflects more sunlight back into space, which makes the area a little cooler. So the next winter is a little colder, and the next summer is a little cooler still.
So even more snow stays.
Exactly. And over thousands and thousands of years, that little bit of leftover snow accumulates and compacts and turns into a 2-mile thick glacier that covers an entire continent. It's not about the extreme event, the harsh winter. It's about the tiny accumulation that never gets interrupted, that never melts.
That is compounding.
That is a perfect metaphor for compounding. Wealth isn't about explosive high returns, the extreme winters. It's about pretty good, uninterrupted, tiny accumulations over massive amounts of time.
It's about the snow that doesn't melt.
You got it.
Which brings us, of course, to Warren Buffett.
The patron saint of compounding.
And we kind of demystify him a bit here. We think he's rich because he's a genius stock picker. And he is a genius stock picker, no doubt. But the real secret is simply he's been doing it for a very, very long time.
That's it. He's been investing since he was about 10 or 11 years old. His runway has been enormous.
The stat here is just wild. 96% of Warren Buffett's current net worth came after his 60th birthday.
Let that sink in for a second. 96%. He was basically a standard, run-of-the-mill rich guy until he was about retirement age, and then the compounding curve just went vertical.
There's a thought experiment in the source that illustrates this perfectly. Imagine if Buffett was a normal guy. Imagine he started investing at age 30, like most of us do, instead of age 11, and he retired at 60.
But let's give him his genius. Let's say he still got his incredible 22% annual returns.
Right, so he's still a genius investor, but he just has a normal 30-year time horizon. What would his net worth be today?
About $11.9 million.
Wait, his actual net worth is over $100 billion. And in this much more normal scenario, it's under $12 million.
That is the power of time. The difference between $12 million and $100 billion is not skill. It is purely the extra 50 years he spent in the market. He is a snowbank that started accumulating in the 1940s and never melted.
And you can compare him to Jim Simons from the Medallion Fund.
Jim Simons is arguably a better pure investor. His fund has generated 66% annual returns. That is unheard of. It's just astronomical. But he is worth far, far less than Buffett.
Why?
Because he only started doing it in his 50s. He didn't have the 80-year runway. Buffett's skill is investing, but his secret is time.
We struggle with this because our brains are so linear.
They really are. If I say 8 plus 8 plus 8, you know the answer is 24. If I say 8 times 8 times 8, your brain just sort of shuts down. You can't visualize it. We cannot intuitively grasp exponential growth. We underestimate it every single time.
So the advice isn't go find the highest possible returns. It's start as early as you can and then do not interrupt the process.
That's the key. Do not interrupt it. Boredom is your friend. If you want excitement, take a few $100 and go to Vegas. Your investing portfolio should be as boring as watching paint dry. If you're feeling excited about it, you're probably doing something wrong. You're taking too much risk.
And that leads perfectly into our next segment. Because if you want to let it compound for 80 years, you have to survive for 80 years. Segment 5, getting rich versus staying rich.
And these are two completely different, almost mutually exclusive skills. This is the central paradox.
Right. To get rich, what do you need? You need optimism. You have to take risks. You have to have confidence and believe the future will be great. I'm going to start this company. I'm going to buy this stock that no one's heard of.
But to stay rich requires the exact opposite. It requires paranoia, it requires humility, it requires a deep, abiding fear of losing it all.
You have to somehow carry two opposing mindsets in your head at the exact same time. Optimism and paranoia.
And very few people can do that. There's a story here about the missing musketeer. We all know Warren Buffett and his partner, Charlie Munger. But there was a third partner in the early days, a man named Rick Guerin.
Rick Guerin, the third genius.
And Buffett himself said Rick was just as smart as them, just as talented at picking businesses. But he disappeared from the partnership. Why?
Buffett's quote on this is just haunting. He said, "Charlie and I always knew we would become rich. We weren't in a hurry. Rick was just in a hurry."
In the big market downturn of 1973-74, the market crashed 70%. It was a bloodbath. And Rick had used leverage. He had borrowed a lot of money to buy stocks because, like Buffett said, he was in a hurry to get really rich really fast.
And when the market crashed, he got a margin call.
The broker called and said, "You need to put up more money or we sell your shares." And he didn't have the money, so he was forced to sell his shares of Berkshire Hathaway to Buffett at bargain basement prices just to pay his debt.
He was forced off the table. He was wiped out.
He didn't survive. And because he didn't survive that one downturn, he missed the next 40 years of compounding that made Buffett and Munger billionaires many times over.
We knew he'd get rich. Rick was just in a hurry. Wow.
It is. No return is ever worth the risk of ruin. Survival is the single most important thing.
There's a great example of this survival mindset from, of all places, Silicon Valley, Sequoia Capital.
The top venture capital firm. They funded Apple, Google, WhatsApp, you name it. They've seen it all.
Their leader, Michael Moritz, was asked how they've managed to survive and thrive for over 40 years in such a brutal industry. His answer was, "We survived because we are always afraid."
They're perpetually paranoid. Even when they're on top of the world, they operate as if they are about to go broke tomorrow. And that fear keeps them humble. It keeps them from making reckless, overconfident bets.
This brings up the core investing concept of the margin of safety.
Benjamin Graham's big idea. He was Buffett's mentor, the father of value investing. And the concept is actually very simple. If you do an analysis and you think a company's stock is worth $1, don't buy it for 90 cents. Buy it for 60 cents.
Why the big gap?
Because you might be wrong. The world is an uncertain place. The future is unknowable. A new competitor might emerge. The CEO might quit. That gap, that 40 cents, is your margin of safety. It's the room for error. It's for when you are wrong.
The life application of this is so useful. If you think the drive to the airport takes 30 minutes, leave an hour early.
Exactly. If you think your portfolio needs to earn 4% a year to meet your goals, build a plan that works, even if it only earns 2%. If you plan for the best case, a single surprise can kill you. If you plan for the worst case, a surprise is just an inconvenience.
And if you survive all those surprises, you get to benefit from the long tail.
The long tail effect. This is the hidden math of survival. You can be wrong, even spectacularly wrong, most of the time and still make an absolute fortune.
Like the art collector Heinz Berggruen.
Right. He bought tons and tons of art. Most of it turned out to be worthless junk. But he also bought a few paintings by Picasso, a few by Matisse, and he held them for decades. The massive astronomical gains on those few winners paid for all the hundreds of losers 1,000 times over.
Or look at Amazon.
Amazon is a failure machine. The Fire Phone was a total disaster. Amazon Travel, remember that? Dozens and dozens of failed products. But it doesn't matter, because AWS and Prime were such massive long-tail hits that they paid for every single failure 1,000 times over.
But you only get to find those long-tail hits if you have enough cash to survive all the failures along the way.
And that's why cash is king. It looks like it's doing nothing, just sitting in a bank account losing to inflation. But what it's actually doing is buying you a precious commodity. It's buying you the right to survive long enough to hit a long-tail event.
I love that framing. Cash buys you time. It buys you staying power.
Which brings us to a very human and maybe controversial idea that being reasonable is better than being rational.
Segment 6. This is where the engineers and the math nerds might get angry at us.
The spreadsheet warriors absolutely hate this section.
We are told constantly to be rational data nerds, to follow the math, to optimize everything. But the source here says, screw rational, just be reasonable.
Because we are humans, we are messy, emotional creatures, not robots.
The best example of this is Harry Markowitz. This guy won the Nobel Prize in economics for developing modern portfolio theory. He literally invented the complicated math of how to build the optimal investment portfolio.
He is the father of optimization.
So when a reporter asked him how he personally invested his own money for retirement, you'd expect him to say, well, I use my Nobel Prize-winning formula.
But he didn't. He said, I just split my money 50-50 between stocks and bonds.
But why? That's not mathematically optimal.
And he said, I just wanted to minimize my future regret. He knew himself. He knew that if the market went way up and he wasn't in it enough, he'd feel stupid. And if the market crashed and he was all in, he'd feel stupid. So he chose the path that would let him sleep at night.
The sleep test.
That is the only test that truly matters. Can you sleep soundly with your portfolio?
This comes up all the time with the mortgage debate. Mathematically, paying off a 3% mortgage early when you could be earning 8% in the stock market is dumb.
It is technically irrational. You're leaving money on the table.
But if having that debt hanging over your head stresses you out, if it keeps you up at night, then paying it off is perfectly reasonable because what you're buying isn't a financial return, you're buying peace of mind.
And if you have peace of mind, you're less likely to panic and make bad decisions elsewhere. The principle of investing is not to let your position affect your sleep. It's as simple as that.
The source even argues that we should have irrational attachments to some of our investments, which sounds like heresy.
It does. But think about it. If you only own a stock because the numbers on a spreadsheet look good, what happens when the numbers look bad for a year or two?
You sell it, you bail.
But if you own that stock because you actually like the company, you think their mission is cool, you love their products, that emotional bond acts as a buffer. It stops you from panic selling during a crash. It helps you stick with it long enough for the investment to work out. Your irrationality keeps you in the game.
So it's okay to be a little emotional. It's okay to be a human being.
As long as that emotion is helping you stay disciplined, not causing you to be reckless, it's a fine line.
Okay, moving to our final segment. The big finish, segment 7. The true meaning of wealth.
This is the philosophical landing. After all this, why are we even doing it? What's the point?
And we start with the Ferrari paradox. I think everyone can relate to this. You're walking down the street and you see a Ferrari drive by.
Or a Lamborghini, yeah.
And the thought that pops into your head is, man, if I had that car, people would think I'm so cool. They'd admire me.
But you don't think, wow, the person driving that car is so cool.
Not at all. You ignore the driver completely. You don't even see them.
So the driver of the car thinks he is getting respect and admiration. But in reality, everyone is just ignoring him and using his expensive car as a prop for their own fantasy of what it would be like to have it.
No one cares about your possessions. They're looking right through you at their own desires.
If you want respect, be kind and be humble. A Ferrari doesn't buy respect. It buys attention, and usually the wrong kind.
This leads to that crucial distinction between being rich and being wealthy.
They are not the same thing. Rich is visible. It's a high income. It's the fancy cars, the big house, the designer clothes. It's money that you have spent.
And wealthy is invisible.
It's the money you didn't spend. It's money in the bank, in investment accounts, in index funds. It's financial assets that haven't been converted into stuff yet.
And the goal isn't to be rich. The goal is to be wealthy. Because wealth, not richness, provides options.
Which is the ultimate dividend of money.
Control over your time. The highest, most valuable thing money can buy is the ability to say no.
And it's a progression. It starts small. Having a little bit of savings means you can afford to take a sick day without worrying about your paycheck.
Having 6 months of savings.
That means you can quit a toxic job you hate without having another one lined up. That's a huge level of freedom.
And having real wealth.
That means you can retire when you want. You can work only on projects you love, with people you respect, on your own schedule. That is the pinnacle of freedom.
We spend so much of our lives trying to buy more stuff. But the data is clear. The one thing that reliably makes people happier is having control over their own time.
So reframe how you think about saving. It's not a sacrifice. You are not depriving yourself. You are buying freedom points. With every dollar you save instead of spend, you are buying back your own time from a future boss.
I'm not saving money, I'm buying my freedom.
It changes your entire perspective.
So let's wrap this entire deep dive up. Let's land the plane. The outro. Becoming the rational optimist.
which is about holding two opposing thoughts in your head at the same time.
In the short term, be paranoid, be a pessimist, save cash, expect recessions, expect things to break. That's how you survive.
But in the long term, be an optimist. Believe in human ingenuity and progress. Believe in the boring magic of compounding. That's how you grow.
Stop pretending finance is physics.
It's psychology. It's messy and human.
Acknowledge luck, respect risk, and learn how to say, enough.
And please remember, the goal isn't the Ferrari. The goal is the freedom to wake up and do whatever you want with your day.
To leave you with one final thought. We talked about being reasonable instead of rational. The rational move is always to optimize for the highest return. But what if the most valuable return isn't on a spreadsheet? What if the best investment you can make is using your money to buy back your own time, even in small ways? Maybe that's the real ROI we should all be chasing.
Good luck, and may you be wealthy and free.